Well, welcome back, everybody. And today we're going to go a little bit more into selection as we take a look at the selection process. Have you ever wondered what legal obligations employers have when it comes to employing you? Well, in HR, the legal obligations, the considerations that you have to make before you hire people, even the questions that you ask, you have to be very careful with so as not to discriminate. So today we're going to take a look at some of those considerations as we go more into the selection process. Well, welcome back, everyone, and let's continue on today with Chapter 7 again, and we're selecting human resources, and today we're going to be talking about screening and pre-screening. Now, when it comes to the selection process, we have pre-employment screening, which is really before the applicants are allowed to fill out the applications. Employers screen to determine if individual meets minimum qualifications. Now, normally, they'll fill out an application, and the application will go through a screening process and so forth. But before you hire that person, you want to be able to screen them, whatever strategy you use, to determine if they're going to be the right person for that job. Now, you have electronic assessment screening, and this is software used to review resumes and application forms that's received. And today, when you send in a resume through Indeed or Monster or whatever the website may be, if you're doing it electronically, they're going to have a system in place that will weed out all of the applications that don't match the job requirements. So how do you get around that? Well, if you want to make sure that your application is going to be received by somebody, whatever that job description talks about, you need to put that in there. If it says need 5 years of work experience, then you can put I have more than 5 years experience. If they require a bachelor's degree, you put I have a bachelor's degree. So these things will, they're looking for keywords, and those keywords, if they're not in there, they will disqualify you. Disqualification questions to understand individual KSAs. They may ask you questions dealing with the job or certain types of issues that you may be going through. Have you ever had a felony? That may be a disqualification. KSAs, do you have a minimum of 10 years proven experience in a particular job? And if you can't honestly say yes, then that would disqualify you. So there's different questions that once you put yes to or no to may disqualify you right from the beginning. And then you have assessment tests, background, drug, financial screening. All of these are methods that the organization will use to be able to weed out. And this is what you need to understand. They're there. Staffing is there to weed people out. The personnel director, the one who is interviewing you, the application itself is not designed to bring you in. It's designed to weed you out. And those that rise to the top are the ones that the organization will be looking for. So the whole onboarding process, as far as application and screening and all of that, they're really not your friend. They're not there to bring you in. They're there to find ways of disqualifying you so they can get to the qualified people. Now, social networking is a fairly new method of screening. They may go onto your Facebook page or Twitter page and see what your interests are, what type of affiliations you are a part of, what kind of person they are, really going to be getting when you come to that organization. And if you are part of a controversial group, hate group or something like that, then they can definitely weed you out. So some people are kind of leery of that because you see it as being your personal business and the company invading your privacy. But once it's on social network, it's open for everybody, and everybody can see it. Now, there are those who mask their true identity in Facebook. They'll create a Facebook page that will be a cover, but yet they'll have another Facebook page that reveals their true identity and so forth. So there's ways of working around that. But companies are using today social networking to determine if a person is the type of person they want to bring in. And when you put down that you're a people person, that you get along well, they're going to take a look at how many friends you have on Facebook and so forth. So that's another selection method that can either bring you closer to the hiring phase or disqualify you from the very beginning. When do you use electronic screening? Well, as you see here, when you have a large volume of applicants, and this is when you're taking a look at computers screening your application and so forth, when the quality of hires need to be increased and the process needs to speed up. So here you don't have a lot of time, but you do have a large volume of openings, or you may have a big corporation and you may be looking at 1,000 resumes. I remember I was the dean of a college, the adult education side of it, and I was hiring for an executive director, and I had more than 500 resumes within the first several days. Now, this is back when they mailed them in, so you can imagine the time that it took to screen those. And that's why when you submit a resume, always have a cover letter, because the cover letter is usually the first thing that I'm going to look at. And if I don't see those key words there that I put into the job requirements, then chances are I'm going to throw it away. So I may look at it for 3 to 5 seconds to see if those words are there. If they're not, then it goes in the trash can. So you might want to practice that if you are trying to build a resume. I have more than 70 resumes in my computer. Each one is tailor-made for the specific jobs that I have applied for. I don't have just one standard resume or cover letter. Each one is designed for that job. So there's not one cookie-cutter approach to resumes. You have to look at what they're wanting, and you have to match what they want with your talents and experience and so forth. But an electronic software program will screen out those that are not meeting all of the qualifications, so you do increase the quality of the applicants that you're getting by using electronic media. Now, application forms is the basis for pre-screening information. Here's where you put down your history, your background. A lot of times they'll ask for work history and where you've lived and all of that. So you're announcing formally on paper that you want to apply for a position, and then you leave yourself up to that interviewer who's going to be looking at that application and asking questions based on it. And it's the basic record for applicants who are hired. All of that stuff goes into your personnel file. They keep it, and that stays in your permanent record. You also can do research on the effectiveness of the selection process by looking at applications. Are we asking the right questions on these applications? Are there things that can be deleted? Can we streamline it more? So there's ways that you can evaluate your whole staffing process from the selection side just by having a good application and form and collecting them to do research on. And you're assuming that they are giving truthful information. When they put it down and then they sign at the bottom, they're attesting that, to the best of my knowledge, all of this is true. So some will embellish, again, on their abilities and experience, but by and large, this is a document that will attest to the truthfulness of that person's KSAOs. Now, there are disclaimers and notices. When you are giving a resume or when you are taking an application, whichever the case may be, You will have on that application a lot of times disclaimers that will talk about employment at will. And employment at will just simply means that either you or the employee can terminate the work arrangement at any time for any reason. So you are working at will and they are employing you at will. There's nothing guaranteed. For guarantees, you need to sign a formal contract that stipulates the time you'll be working, the salary that you'll be getting, and so forth. References, contacts, sometimes they'll ask for that, and I never volunteer that on a resume. I just put references available upon request, and if they need that, they'll ask for it, but I make them ask for everything that they get from me. Employment testing, they may require that you be tested for drugs or whatever. They'll usually have that on there, and you'll have to sign an agreement that you will take part in it. Application time limit, a lot of times a company will hold your resume for 30, 90, 180 days, sometimes a year, if they don't hire you directly. So you may have them say that they'll keep your resume on file just in case they need some extra people if you wasn't the one who was selected at the beginning. And information falsification, that's just a little disclaimer there that it's against the law to perjure yourself or whatever. In some of these applications, government applications especially, you can't falsify information without getting in trouble. Now, there are some things that you can't ask on a application. First of all, marital status. And just keep in mind, everything that you ask on a application has to be a BFOQ. The questions that you ask during the interview, they have to be BFOQs. And what is BFOQ? Bona fide occupational qualification. And this means that this is necessary for you to be able to do your job. So marital status, it makes no difference unless you're going to be away forever. You won't come back to the United States. Even then, being married wouldn't have a bearing on that I could see. But BFOQ does not require or does not cover marital status. Neither does it do with height or weight unless that's a BFOQ. Now, fire department, police, military, they have height weight standards, and those are BFOQs. So depending upon the job, you can or you may not ask that particular question. Number and ages of dependents. Now, you don't ask that during the application phase, but when you are doing your taxes, you fill out your tax forms, you would have to put it if you have dependents and you want to claim them. But during the application part of it, that has no bearing on it. Information on your spouse. They may ask for emergency contact information, and that's within their purview. You don't have to answer it, but if they ask that, it should be within the confines of emergency needs. Date of high school graduation, and then emergency contact information. These it just depends on what you are hiring for. And now, I have seen some applications that will ask me for my education history, and I will put high school. They might have changed the regulations, but I have had people that require high school education to ask me, are you a high school graduate? Yes or no. And then what high school did you graduate from? So I have seen this on an application. And then emergency contact information. So the application form, I have seen them on applications, but according to your author, they are illegal now. So just be careful with that. And should they ask you, some people have asked me, what if they ask me something that I know is not right? Like, am I married? there's a way that you can respond, and this is the way I would respond. Well, I just want you to know that, according to EEOC, that's not a BFOQ. But if you need me to answer this, and you do as you feel comfortable with, I don't have a problem telling people. It makes no difference to me if they know I'm married or not. But for some people, I can see a person hiring an individual that they may have an attraction to when they see them, and want to know, some things about them that's really none of their business. So, you gauge that as you want to, but you can let them know that what they're asking is illegal, but you handle it the way you feel is best. Social Security number. And I've seen Social Security numbers on applications. So some of this stuff, I think it's depending upon the company and the type of company it is and why they want the information. So just be careful about that. Now, resumes as applications. The EEOC standard requires that a resume is treated as an application form. And if you're told, though, to fill out an application, you fill out an application. But if you submit a resume, that is implying that you want to work there and that you are formally announcing your desire to work. So they should treat you like an applicant. Application forms are better because the same information is furnished by all applicants, and I do agree with that, because the same questions are asked over and over again to everybody who applies, where a resume may include or may exclude certain things that you would want to know about a person. And if your hiring decision is made off of resumes, there may be things that you would miss about other applicants who would otherwise be qualified and get the job. But by the same token, those who are the more comprehensive and those who answer fully that resume and have everything in it, they're the ones who are probably going to get the job in the first place. And that's what I've just said. Resumes may embellish or omit negative information. And then security concerns. With diversity, we have to be aware now that we have people of different cultures, races, and so forth. And really what we're dealing with here is the I-9. Most all employees now are required to fill out an I-9, which is the immigration form that establishes your citizenship, and it determines whether you're a U.S. citizen, registered alien, illegal alien, whichever the case may be. So you can get into a lot of trouble forging or submitting fraudulent documents. As you see here, it could they could seize your assets, the government, or prosecute you as a manager if you take those things. So you have to be careful when you're receiving documents that the documents are legitimate, and they give you a list of what's acceptable that they have to provide upon employment, and they have to fill out that form also. Now, there are different types of tests when it comes to the screening part. You have cognitive, physical, and psychomotor tests. Cognitive measures your thinking ability, your reasoning, math abilities. Physical test is where you have to demonstrate some type of endurance or physical movement or strength. Psychomotor test measure your coordination, hand-eye coordination, arm-hand steadiness, and other factors. There are some companies that require any one of these or all three of these. I was interviewing for a position with CSX, which is a railroad company, and they had a manager trainee program that they were going to put me in, and I had to go to a physical therapy facility in Memphis, and I had to show them that I could lift so many pounds so many times with my arms and my legs. And I was asking, what is this for? And they said, well, as a manager, if a train should break down in some rural area, we may have to fly you out there, and you might have to assist the conductor in repairing whatever's broken. And these tools can be quite heavy. So that was a BFOQ. I've also had to use reasoning abilities when I'm working for the government. I had to take tests that would ask me about integrity and honesty issues. If you saw a person stealing a pen or taking a pen from the office, what would you do? So that would be my ability to think, to reason. Psychomotor tests, there have been some where you have to, like a drug or an alcohol test they give you on the side of the road, where you would have to extend your arm and then touch your nose and so forth to be able to demonstrate that you're steady, that you're stable and so forth. But all of these are legitimate tests as long as they follow along the BFOQ standards. Work sample test, it requires an applicant to perform a simulated task that is specific to that job. For instance, an office assistant may have to develop a spreadsheet in Excel and be able to manipulate formulas and so forth to demonstrate that they have done that. Situational judgment test, and if you're put in this situation, you have an employee who is being aggressive or volatile, how would you handle that? So they put you in situations and you would have to tell them how you would deal with it. An assessment centers, and that's where you have a series of tests given by multiple raters. So you're not just being given one test, you have several people who are evaluating you through a series of multiple tests that are pertinent to that job and to that organization. Now, emotional intelligence is a term that we have come to really take notice of over the past decade. And really, emotional intelligence, EI, is the ability to recognize yours and your employees' feelings and be sensitive to that. In the past, we didn't care how people felt. Just come to work on time. I don't care if you're mad, sad, angry, happy, whatever. Just do the work. And we're happy with that. But today, if we're going to develop people, we need to grow a sensitivity towards, what they're going through. At least this is what the experts say. We need to be more sensitive to what they're dealing with and going through in life and be able to manage them more effectively, having that sensitivity. And we need to be, according to the experts, more sensitive to our own emotional states and so forth. A lot of people may misunderstand you. I know there's a lot of times when my wife thinks I'm mad and I'm perfectly happy, but she says it's just the expression on your face. You look angry, and I don't even realize it. So, when I do think, when I'm in thought, I do furrow my brows and my forehead gets a little crinkled because I'm thinking about things and going over things, and I don't necessarily have to be upset or angry, but I can certainly look like that. So just being on top of your feelings and how you project yourself to other people is what's meant by emotional intelligence. They do better on the job, as you see here, and these are some soft skills. If you remember, this is the person-organization match where you can get along with the people, you can recognize them you as not only as workers, but as people who have feelings and so forth. If you're going to work in teams and groups, it's very important that you can develop a higher sense of emotional intelligence as you have to handle stress and conflict within groups. Honesty, integrity test, we talked about that. Now, the polygraph test is something that we don't really use anymore because of the controversial nature of it, but they used to use it, and some people up until I guess a decade ago were using it quite often. Now, I have been given a polygraph test for a company. It was a security company. It wasn't for pre-employment. It was part of the last phase of onboarding. So the timing might have been right or wrong, but I have gone through it, and it's fairly comprehensive. But today, it's illegal to use those things. Now, that's going to be it for today, and we'll pick up back tomorrow with the rest of Chapter 7.
Well, as you can see, even some of the questions that you can ask a person can get you into legal trouble. Asking things that really aren't a part of the job, things that don't pertain to a BFOQ, which is a bona fide occupational qualification. All of these questions are illegal, and you need to be able to be aware of it so that you can avoid those questions in the future. Hiring someone is an important responsibility. We need to be good stewards of God's time and His resources, and that means bringing the most qualified person in the right way at the right time. Well, that will do it for today. You have a good day, and we will finish up tomorrow as we continue on with selecting human resources.